Hey guys, tonight we're strutting right into the most dangerous catwalk history ever saw, the world of Victorian beauty. Forget high fashion and gentle candlelight. We're talking arsenic face creams, lead eyeliner, and a society so obsessed with being fair and lovely that people would risk death by powder puff just to look less like themselves. So before you get cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of deeply relaxing, historically horrifying bedtime comedy. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Is it a sensible 10 p.m, or are you, like me, pondering 19th century death blushes at 2:14 a.m? Now, dim the lights, put a fan on for that soft white noise, and let yourself get comfortable. Bonus points if you're wearing a Victorian nightgown or just covered in suspiciously old makeup. Let's ask the real questions. Why did people put acid on their faces and hope for the best? How do you flirt when you're also kind of slowly poisoning yourself? What happens when your daily beauty routine costs more than your funeral? Did people really think belladonna eye drops would make them irresistible, or just permanently cross-eyed? What's the shelf life of an arsenic complexion? And how do you explain to your friends that the reason your teeth glow in the dark is fashion? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1865, the heart of the Victorian era. You're young, attractive, ambitious, and you have absolutely no idea that beauty sleep could be fatal. Good luck. You wake up in your lacy bed, sunlight slanting through the heavy curtains. It's a new day, and your first thought is, am I glowing with health, or is it just last night's lead-based night cream working its magic or murder? Welcome to Victorian mornings, where you check for pulse and pallor before checking the weather. The sheets cling to your skin with a faint chemical stiffness, the lingering perfume of cold cream mingling with something sharper, something that whispers caution, as you sit up and blink at your reflection in the vanity mirror. The glass is slightly fogged from your breath, and possibly the slow off-gassing of whatever your maid used to polish it. You stretch gingerly, half expecting your bones to creak or your skin to flake off in a gentle dusting of last night's beauty regime. After all, in Victorian England, the line between morning glow and mortality is measured in milligrams of lead. You swing your feet onto the thick rug. The fibres are soft, but your toes tingle, either from the cold or more likely from a minor case of chronic arsenic exposure. It's difficult to be sure. That's the thing about Victorian beauty. Nothing is certain except that everything is probably dangerous. You glance at your bedside table. There's the usual arsenal, a tiny jar labelled Pearl Skin Rejuvenator, guaranteed to whiten, brighten and lightly intoxicate, a little glass vial of belladonna eye drops, and a mysterious wafer wrapped in tissue that smells faintly of almonds. You try to remember if you ate 1 or 2 of those last night. Or was it 3? It's a numbers game really, Russian roulette, but with skincare. From across the room, the mirror catches the slant of morning light and throws your reflection back at you, harsh and honest. The lead-based cream did its job. Your face is smooth, impossibly pale, and just shy of the kind of luminous glow that makes strangers wonder if you're ill or merely well-bred. You look expensive, possibly embalmed. You blink and notice a faint redness at the edges of your lips. Is it irritation? The first flush of Victorian tuberculosis? Or just the result of last night's new Venetian rose lipstick with its secret blend of carmine and mercury? The answer is yes, to all of the above. It's tempting to skip the morning routine, maybe go for a natural look. But in 1865, natural is what happens to people who have given up, or who can afford to live outside the sharp-eyed social circles of fashionable London. You, however, have an image to maintain, and so you reach for the wash basin, splash your face with water hauled in a tin jug, and ignore the slightly metallic taste on your lips. They say water is the source of life, but here it mostly serves to make your skin sting and your hair frizz. You wonder for a moment if you're actually cleaner, or just giving the various toxins new places to hide. As you dab your face dry, you run a quick inventory. Is your hair falling out in clumps again? Are your fingernails still attached? Any odd blue lines along your gums? These are important Victorian questions, the kind that separate the truly fashionable from the merely surviving. You take stock and decide you're good for another day, mostly. Outside, a carriage clatters down the street, and you hear the distant cry of a newspaper boy hawking headlines about the Queen, a cholera outbreak, and somewhere lower down, the latest in beauty deaths. You make a mental note. Avoid any face creams described as miraculous by anyone who can't spell the word miraculous. With a deep, bracing breath in through the nose, always, open-mouth breathing is for commoners and invalids, you stand, stretch, and smile into the mirror. Your teeth feel a bit loose, but hey, at least you're pretty. Welcome to another Victorian morning, equal parts hope, routine, and risk management. Congratulations, you're still here. For now. Before breakfast, it's time for the daily ritual of staring in the mirror, judging every blemish like it's a personal failing. A single pimple could mean social death, or worse, that your face powder isn't toxic enough. Your reflection is both judge and executioner. You lean in, squinting as a slant of weak London sunlight glances off the glass, illuminating every freckle, spot, and potential scandal blooming on your skin. In this era, beauty is measured in the number of floors you can successfully suffocate beneath powder and creams with ingredients that double as rat poison. You examine your cheeks, searching for evidence that you are winning the Victorian lottery of not dying from your own beauty routine. At least, not yet. Your nose is next. Is it red? Shiny? Has it taken on a slight greenish tinge from last night's accidental brush with arsenic-tinged wallpaper? A slight blemish hovers dangerously on the tip, threatening to bloom into a full-scale crisis by lunchtime. You contemplate whether it's a sign of inner corruption or merely a warning that your French secret complexion milk is falling down on the job. Either way, you know you can't let your enemies, otherwise known as your cousins, see it. You tilt your chin up, inspecting your jawline for suspicious lumps, rashes, or the dreaded faint blue lines that mean it's time to cut back on the lead powder. There's a stray eyebrow hair, and you attack it with tweezers made of actual steel. Heavy, slightly rusted, and probably also dangerous. One yank, and you're left with a small red spot that will blossom like a poppy all day. You sigh, shifting your focus to your eyes. Are they bright and full of life, or just slightly dilated from last night's belladonna drops? You blink, trying to look mysterious. Instead, you just look startled, like someone who's been surprised by a ghost, or by the sudden realization that your eyelashes seem thinner than usual. Is that a bald spot? You grab your tiny brush, dabbing it into a cake of blackened charcoal, smudging it across your lids in the hopes of appearing wide-eyed and alluring, not simply wide-eyed and alarmed. The self-critique continues, now moving lower. Your lips, still tinged with the remnants of rouge sublime, are dry and slightly cracked. You remember, too late, that the main ingredient is carmine mixed with a pinch of mercuric sulfide. It tastes a little like pennies. You debate adding more to mask the cracks, or just embracing a natural look, a bold, reckless move in Victorian society, like showing up to a ball without gloves or with visible ankles. You step back for the full-body verdict. Your skin is pale, good. Your cheeks are flushed, possibly from the cold, but you'll claim it's your natural English rose complexion. There's a faint whiff of last night's perfume, which, incidentally, is strong enough to kill a small animal, but barely enough to mask the underlying scent of fear. For a moment, you imagine a world without mirrors, a world where blemishes are simply proof of survival, not evidence to be scrubbed, painted, or pickled away. But then the clock chimes, and you remember. In Victorian society, mirrors don't lie, and neither can you. You dab one more layer of powder, ignore the slight tingling, and try a quick smile. Your teeth, well, they're still mostly attached. Outside, you can hear the rustle of housemaids and the clatter of breakfast trays. There's a day to be faced, invitations to accept and suitors to impress, all of whom will be quietly judging you on the results of this exact morning's self-assessment. One misstep and you'll be whispered about at every tea table in London. You give your reflection a last, steady look. Perfect enough, you whisper. The mirror says nothing, but you know it'll be waiting for you tonight, ready to judge all over again. Welcome to beauty in the Victorian age. High stakes, low safety, and absolutely zero forgiveness for a single pimple. Tea, toast, and a delicate sprinkle of arsenic complexion wafers naturally. Victorian beauty starts on the inside, and apparently so does the slow burn of organ failure. You nibble your beauty pill and wonder, will today be the day your eyebrows fall off, or just your dignity? The kitchen is heavy with the scent of strong black tea and slightly burnt bread, but your focus is on the tiny pastel-coloured tin by your plate. The label reads Dr. Lumsden's marvellous arsenic complexion wafers, for that lasting, delicate glow. There's a cheerful portrait of a young woman on the lid, her skin as pale as the moon and about as lifelike. Your mother swears by these little wonders. She's been taking them for years, and now her hands are as white as porcelain. She says it's the look of refinement, but you suspect it's mostly poor circulation. You pop a wafer into your mouth and let it dissolve. The texture somewhere between communion wafer and mild regret. There's a slight tingle as the arsenic works its way into your bloodstream, quietly sabotaging your organs in the name of a flawless complexion. No one talks about this at the breakfast table. It's just part of the morning routine. Brush your hair, powder your face, ingest a controlled dose of industrial toxin. Across the table, your older sister is dabbing her lips with beet juice, a less fashionable, but also less terminal alternative. She eyes your tin with a mixture of envy and concern, but says nothing. Conversation is subdued this morning, possibly because everyone is conserving energy for the effort of digesting breakfast and beauty aids at the same time. Or perhaps it's the mild nausea that always seems to accompany the third cup of tea and second helping of heavy metals. You scan the newspaper, your gaze skimming over the latest society scandal, a new play at the West End, and a tragic story about a debutante who passed away after a short illness, which everyone knows is code for tried a new face powder. The obituaries are filled with suspiciously youthful casualties, all described as having gone too soon. You wonder if their complexions were admired at the funeral, or if everyone was too distracted by the faint smell of almonds. Back to breakfast. You're careful not to drip tea on your dress, not because you fear a stain, laundresses are cheap, but because the tannins might react with the arsenic and do something unpredictable. Victorian beauty is a game of trial and error, with a heavy emphasis on error. The only thing worse than not being beautiful is being beautiful for a tragically short amount of time. The wafer has a curious aftertaste. You chase it with a bite of toast, savouring the crunch, the butter, and the knowledge that bread, at least, is only mildly adulterated with chalk and alum. Your father reads aloud from a pamphlet warning of the dangers of cosmetic excess, and everyone nods along, none of you willing to admit you're all complicit. In Victorian England, hypocrisy is a vital nutrient. You try not to think about what's happening inside you, red blood cells surrendering, liver cells staging tiny protests, your nerves taking on a faint persistent buzz. Instead, you focus on the prize, skin so pale it glows in candlelight, cheeks that will never betray you with a single natural flush, a reputation for ethereal beauty, and if you play your cards wrong, an equally ethereal lifespan. Breakfast concludes with another cup of tea, a delicate cough into a lace handkerchief, and the clink of arsenic tins being tidied away until tomorrow. You rise, slightly dizzy, your reflection in the window ghostly and perfect. You're ready to face the day, armed with wit, wardrobe, and just a touch of poison. After all, nothing says good morning in Victorian society quite like a full stomach, a steady hand, and the soft, slow onset of arsenic-induced elegance. It's time to put your face on literally thick layers of white lead paint for that fashionable corpse-adjacent glow. The more it burns, the better it must be working. Just try not to sweat. It streaks, and nobody wants to look like a melting ghost. You approach the dressing table with reverence and just a touch of fear. Each glass pot and porcelain dish holds the promise of transformation, and, statistically, the threat of early demise. The star of the show is a heavy ceramic jar labelled Madame Beaufort's patent Venetian enamel, as used by the elite. The directions are elegantly scripted, but the real instruction is simple. Slather generously, avoid breathing deeply, and do not, under any circumstances, cry. You begin with the cold, chalky paste, scooping it onto your fingers and spreading it over your cheeks, nose, and forehead. It's thick, heavy, and oddly grainy, like spreading cream cheese that really doesn't want to be there. Instantly your skin tingles, somewhere between a gentle sting and a full-blown chemical rebellion. Your eyes water. You blink away tears, reminding yourself that in Victorian England, suffering is just another word for well-groomed. In the mirror, your face transforms. Pores vanish, freckles are erased, and your complexion takes on the pale, luminous look that's somewhere between fragile beauty and mid-epidemic casualty. This is exactly what society wants. A face so white it could frighten children, so smooth it's obvious you've never worked a day outdoors, and so uniform that even your own mother might hesitate at your bedside. The trick, of course, is in the layering. 1 coat will not do. 2 is respectable. 3 is recommended for those attending dinner parties, funerals, or particularly competitive church services. With each layer, the paste cracks a bit more at the corners of your mouth, clings tighter beneath your eyes, and settles into a chalky ridge at your hairline. You smooth, pat, and dust, covering your tracks with an extra flourish of rice powder, imported, expensive, and only slightly less toxic than the lead foundation underneath. Your maid, hovering anxiously, offers to help with your ears and neck. You accept, careful to tilt your chin just so lest a single patch of human skin betray the careful illusion. Nothing must be missed. The ears especially are a dead giveaway, quite literally, as the lead can seep into the bloodstream fastest through the thin skin there. But fashion is relentless. To be beautiful is to be complete, from the tip of your chin to the top of your mercifully gloved hands. As the final touch, you dab on a spot of rouge, again containing ingredients you'd rather not think about, and attempt to smile. The foundation creases ominously. You practice the serene, closed-lipped expression favoured by society women. Calm, composed, unlikely to crack unless forced to emote, sneeze, or heaven forbid, laugh. The hazards are well known. The lady down the street, Mrs. Flannery, once got caught in a summer drizzle and arrived at tea looking like a tragic harlequin. Her cheeks streamed with white rivulets, and by the end of the afternoon half her face had relocated to her collar. She was not invited back. A lesson to all. Rain is your enemy, as is sweat, tears, and any form of sudden movement. Walking briskly is risky. Dancing is outright madness. Still, you persevere, shoulders back and chin lifted, prepared to face the day. Your face, your mask, your chemical shield is finally ready. In this world, the art of deadly foundation is not just beauty, it's social armour, status, and self-preservation. As long as you don't scratch, sweat, or laugh too hard, you just might survive the day with your reputation and your carefully crafted facade intact. Before you leave your room, a few drops of perfume behind the ears, never mind that half the ingredients are banned today, your new favourite scent, eau de lethal nightshade, leaves people breathless, sometimes permanently. The ornate glass bottle winks at you from the vanity, its stopper cut in the shape of a rose and the liquid within glimmering a faint unnatural purple. It's a gift from your aunt, who assures you it's all the rage in Paris, assuming one can survive the initial application. You tip the bottle and let a single drop slide onto your wrist. Instantly your skin tingles, then numbs as the aroma unfolds, a riot of violets, bergamot, and something that smells suspiciously like the inside of a chemist's cupboard. Perfume is serious business in Victorian society. Scent means more than simple allure. It is status, class, a conversation starter, and on occasion, a weapon. The right fragrance marks you as refined, the wrong one as an outsider, or worse, someone who cannot afford to drown out the natural bouquet of coal smoke, horse manure, and the general human struggle that is 19th century London. As you dab more perfume behind your ears and at the base of your throat, you pause to consider the ingredients. The bottle boasts oil of lavender, crushed jasmine, a proprietary blend of rare musks, and in smaller print a whisper of belladonna. The apothecary claimed it was perfectly safe, provided you used with restraint. You chose to interpret restraint as enough to cover the scent of existential dread. The problem is, Victorian perfumery is less about moderation, and more about making an entrance. Some women prefer the heavy musk of civet or ambergris, derived charmingly from the nether regions of distressed animals, while others go for the bright, nose-prickling zest of lemon or bergamot. If you're feeling adventurous, there's always a hint of tar or creosote to really say I walk these foggy streets on purpose. Today, you choose eau de lethal nightshade, a fragrance so intoxicating that several suitors have found themselves at a loss for words, and, briefly, for breath, after a single whiff. Your grandmother always said, a woman should enter a room before she's seen, and with this perfume, you're pretty sure you'll be noticed by everyone, including, potentially, the local coroner. As you descend the staircase, the scent drifts ahead of you, wrapping around banisters and curling beneath door frames. By the time you reach the breakfast table, even the family dog is giving you a respectful berth. Your father wrinkles his nose, your mother offers a tight-lipped smile, and your younger brother feigns fainting for comic effect. The servants are too polite to cough, but you can see them eyeing the open window longingly. But it's out in public where your perfume truly shines, or perhaps shimmers menacingly. In the close quarters of a carriage or at the crowded market, your presence is unmistakable. The butcher offers you the freshest cut, the grocer weighs your apples with extra care, and the local vicar crosses himself just in case. Your friends are curious, your rivals envious, and strangers are either drawn to you or quietly holding handkerchiefs to their noses, as if repelling a mild threat. The downside, of course, is the lingering headache that comes after several hours spent in your own aromatic cloud. But that's a small price for status. After all, Victorians lived in a world that needed deodorizing, public transport, parlours, even lovers' letters were known to be scented. You once received an invitation to tea that reeked so powerfully of violets, you nearly passed out reading it. You smooth your dress, check your gloves for powder, and take one last steadying breath through your mouth naturally. Perfume is not just the finishing touch. It's the opening statement, the secret weapon, and, if you're lucky, the excuse for an early exit if your suitor's conversation is deadly dull. So you step into the world, a fragrant force of nature, hoping your perfume will turn heads, win hearts, and, ideally, not knock anyone fully unconscious before luncheon. In Victorian England, that's the sweet smell of success. You can't face the day without your trusty corset. Laced until you hear your ribs whimper, it's fashion's version of a gentle ongoing mugging. Breathing is optional. Looking hourglassed is not. There it is, laid out on your bed, a marvel of engineering and willful self-sabotage, stitched from sturdy cotton, reinforced with whalebone, and decorated with ribbons that suggest innocence and optimism. The optimism, of course, is that you will survive the day with both your dignity and your internal organs mostly in the same place as when you woke up. Your maid arrives, hands poised and ready for the sacred ritual. She's young and strong. You, by contrast, have already resigned yourself to the process. You step into the corset, arms up, heart steeled, as the first gentle tug becomes a sharp yank, followed by the distinctive sound of your body remembering what it feels like to be gently but firmly compressed. Laces tighten, inch by inch, until your waist is squeezed to a circumference envied by wasps and impossible for most mortals. You attempt small talk to distract yourself. How's the weather? Has the butcher been by? Do you think you'll ever feel your toes again? The maid's answers are polite, but her focus is on symmetry, and on whether you can pass the all-important corset test. Can you touch your thumbs together around your waist? Can you bend at the middle without hearing a worrisome creak from your own spine? Can you sit down without passing out? These are the real measurements of Victorian success. Once fully trussed, you stand before the mirror, posture regal, chest high, and waist impossibly narrow. Your reflection is the very picture of grace, elegance, and mild distress. Your breathing is shallow, there's no room for deep inhales, only polite ladylike gasps. Eating a large breakfast was a rookie mistake. You vow to stick to thin gruel until corsets go out of style, an event you suspect will happen only when pigs fly or Queen Victoria takes up jogging. The advantages, they say, are many. The corset supports your back, trains your figure, and prevents the kind of slouching that marks you as low-class or worse French. It also makes fainting a socially acceptable pastime. If you lose consciousness at the opera, everyone nods knowingly, whispering that you must simply be too refined for this world. In reality, you're just oxygen-starved and praying your knees don't buckle in public. The disadvantages, however, are legion. Coughing is risky. Laughing, dangerous. If you drop something, you have two choices. Summon the maid, or let it remain on the floor as a sacrifice to the gods of posture. Sitting down is an exercise in geometry, and getting back up is a feat worthy of applause. You learn to glide rather than walk, float rather than sit, and lean gracefully when you want to avoid standing for more than 5 minutes at a time. There's a rumour going around, started by your Aunt Mildred, who has an impressively flexible spine, that women have had ribs removed to achieve the perfect silhouette. You consider it. Briefly. But then you remember the last time you sneezed while tightly laced, and you decide that keeping all your bones, however crowded, is a safer bet. By mid-morning, you are radiant and upright, buoyed by the knowledge that your waist is the talk of the town, or at least the source of several jealous whispers. You know the consequences: headaches, shortness of breath, a permanent case of fainting couch syndrome, and the occasional mysterious bruising. But as you glide through your morning routine, you also know one thing for certain. True Victorian beauty is not about comfort. It's about commitment, and you, corseted, breathless, and ready to conquer the parlour are the very definition of committed, and if you do collapse in a heap, at least you'll do it looking spectacular. A drop of belladonna in each eye for that wide, innocent, perpetually surprised look. Bonus side effect, total blindness by age 30. But hey, beauty is pain, and also a slight hallucination. The tiny glass bottle sits on your vanity like a secret passed from one dangerously glamorous generation to the next. It's labelled Essence of Deadly Nightshade for the brightest eyes in London. There's a hand-drawn illustration of a woman with pupils the size of dinner plates and a gaze that could start a scandal at 20 paces. You unscrew the cap, bracing yourself. The solution inside smells faintly herbal, but the warning on the label is quite clear. 1 drop per eye, no more. Consult a physician if vision becomes cloudy, starry, or full of mysterious woodland creatures. You tip your head back, holding the little dropper above your right eye. 1 drop lands with a cool sting, quickly followed by another in your left. The sensation is instant, a prickle, a shimmer, and then, as the pupils blossom wide, the world grows both brighter and slightly blurred, as if you're viewing life through a layer of expensive tulle. You blink, and your gaze in the mirror is transformed. Gone is the squinting, sceptical Englishwoman. In her place is a wide-eyed ingenue, pupils so dark and enormous they look like the business end of a telescope. You are, in a word, irresistible. This is the beauty standard du jour, the height of continental sophistication. Fashionable women in Paris, Milan, and the trendiest corners of Mayfair all swear by belladonna. A wide-eyed stare is said to signal innocence, femininity, and, most importantly, a delicate sensitivity to poetry, proposals, and poor lighting. The right glance, perfectly executed, is rumoured to send men into fits of passion, or at least into mild concern for your ability to see the soup course. But every beauty routine has its price. Within minutes your eyes start to water. The gas lamps seem to burn just a little too brightly. Sunlight is now your enemy. Your newly dilated pupils have declared a truce with darkness and are at war with anything resembling day. You fetch your daintiest lace parasol, your wide-brimmed hat, and prepare for a life spent gently squinting at loved ones, suitors, and the family cat. Reading? Only if you enjoy deciphering a blurry swimming page of indistinct lines. Sewing? Good luck threading a needle when the world has become a watercolour painting. Even walking takes on a new level of danger, as every cobblestone and curb blends into a general suggestion of down. And yet, you persist. Because nothing says I am young, mysterious and unattainable quite like bumping into the furniture and missing every step on the grand staircase. Friends and rivals alike notice the change. Your mother peers into your face, searching for a hint of the wide-eyed innocence she remembers from your nursery days. Your younger siblings are convinced you're always surprised by the weather, by breakfast, by their mere existence. Your suitors, however, are captivated. They declare your gaze mesmerizing and your eyes windows into the very soul. You just hope they don't notice that you're actually trying to see which one is talking. The best part? Belladonna's other, less advertised effect. A faint, floaty sense of well-being, as though you're drifting through a pleasant daydream. Sometimes, if you concentrate, you could swear the wallpaper is breathing. But these are small sacrifices for a life of beauty and intrigue. In the end, vision is overrated. At least that's what you tell yourself as you squint at the tea tray, miss the cup, and pour hot water onto the carpet for the 3rd time this week. Still, you're the talk of the town, the belle of every ball, and the woman everyone is watching, if only because you're liable to walk straight into the punch bowl at any moment. In Victorian England, nothing says charm like a little blindness and a whole lot of commitment to the look. Thin is in. You pluck your brows within an inch of their life, then pencil them back on with a bit of charcoal and hope. If that doesn't work, there's always a stylish eyebrow wig made of someone else's hair. Whose? Don't ask. The daily brow routine is not for the faint of heart or follicle. You sit at your dressing table, squinting into the unforgiving morning light, silver tweezers poised with ruthless intent. Each pluck is both an act of vanity and a minor act of violence. The latest magazines, hand-illustrated of course, are unanimous. The thinner the brow, the higher your chances of being mistaken for a tragic poetess, or a high-born lady who spends her days sighing over pressed flowers. So you pluck, and pluck, and pluck. One brow is distinctly sparser than the other, but symmetry is a distant dream, and besides, you can always blame the lighting. By the time you're done, your brow bone glows with the heat of battle, and you're left with a few wispy hairs and a vague sense of regret. But there's no time for self-pity in the high-stakes world of Victorian beauty. Enter the eyebrow pencil, nothing like today's clever twist-up wonders. Yours is a stub of blackened charcoal, allegedly made from the finest French grapevines, but more likely scavenged from last night's fireplace. You spit on the tip, dab it against your wrist, and begin to sketch your new identity. Some days your brows arch high and haughty, a tribute to classical statues and silent, unamused queens. Other mornings they're thin and straight, a look favoured by those who wish to appear perpetually surprised, or possibly just confused. If you sneeze mid-stroke, well, the result is avant-garde. There is a particular art to getting both sides to match. The left brow is elegant, the right one a chaotic echo. No one will notice, you tell yourself, at least not anyone you wish to talk to. But suppose the morning's artistry fails. Perhaps you went too far, or the charcoal just refuses to adhere to your slightly damp lead-powdered skin. Have no fear. Victorian innovation has an answer. The eyebrow wig. Yes, a tiny arc of real human hair, delicately glued to your forehead with fish glue, egg whites, or whatever adhesive is least likely to cause spontaneous eyebrow flight. The source of the hair is never discussed. It is a truth universally unacknowledged that one woman's lost locks are another woman's crowning glory. You simply hope yours is from a gentlewoman with a good reputation, or at least someone who didn't have fleas. The risks of these beauty strategies are real. There is always the horror story of Lady Emmeline, who sneezed at a dinner party and sent both her brows sailing into the soup. Or the tale of Miss Havisham, who once wandered into a rainstorm and emerged with brows that had migrated to her chin. The lesson: always carry a handkerchief, never scratch your forehead in public, and beware of sudden gusts of wind. Eyebrows, after all, are more than mere lines of hair. They're a signal to the world. In Victorian England, a perfectly thin, dark brow proclaims you're refined, reserved, and possibly suffering for art. A natural bushy brow suggests you're dangerously close to peasantry, or, worse, French. Modern beauty enthusiasts may complain about threading, waxing, or microblading, but nothing compares to the raw anxiety of gluing someone else's hair to your face and hoping it stays put through supper. Still, you persist. Because every glance in the mirror, every raised arch at a ball, every whisper of scandal at tea depends on those tiny, fragile strokes above your eyes. And if it all goes wrong, you remind yourself, at least you're still ahead of your cousin Margaret, who accidentally used lampblack and now looks like she's plotting a jewel heist. In the Victorian world of beauty, that's called winning. Forget blushing naturally. You paint your cheeks with a mixture of red lead and mercuric sulfide. It stings, but that's just the poison doing its job. If it starts to flake, just add more. You perch before your mirror, brush poised and ready, surrounded by tiny pots and jars, each labelled with beautiful calligraphy and a secret death wish. There's rouge exquisite, vermilion tint, and your favourite Madame Moreau's Rose of Youth, which is advertised as both life-restoring and not for internal use. The directions are vague. Apply liberally for the bloom of maidenhood, sparingly for the dignity of widowhood. You have no intention of playing it safe. You dip your brush into the waxy red, catching the sharp, metallic whiff that would alarm anyone not obsessed with looking feverish. The sensation as the colour touches your cheek is immediate, a cold tingle followed by a slow, creeping burn. This is good. This means it's working. The pamphlets claim the slight irritation brings out your natural glow. You suspect it's really just your skin's desperate cry for help. But rosy cheeks are the season's demand. Pale is for the base, but real beauty requires a hint of health, carefully constructed with elements best left in the periodic table. Society women gather in powdery herds, each with cheeks aglow, comparing shades, and occasionally stories of mild numbness and unexplainable twitches. It's just the weather, you will say, as if a frostbitten breeze could cause your face to tremble and your jaw to lock. There's an art to the application. The colour must bloom on the apples of your cheeks, fading just so, never streaking or settling into fine lines. You blend with care, ignoring the flecks of paint that drift onto your collar or the persistent tingling that starts to feel less like beauty and more like an allergic reaction. If the rouge begins to flake by afternoon, you don't panic. You simply reapply. More is always better, or at least more convincing. And so you pat paint and powder layering over last week's residue, until your cheeks shine with the subtle radiance of someone who's either caught a light fever or is about to be discovered in an Agatha Christie novel. The result is dazzling, a flush that screams innocence, vitality, and absolutely nothing to do with your actual circulation. The secret, of course, is to keep smiling, even as the sensation in your face gradually fades. You remember the stories whispered around the card table. Lady Somerset, whose cheeks glowed so brilliantly at the winter ball that they illuminated her dance partner's cufflinks. Or Miss Blake, whose daring experiment with a homemade formula left her with permanent dimples, though not the kind anyone envies. There's a risk in every pot, a legacy of tiny scars and faded freckles left in the name of fashion. The gentlemen notice, of course. They praise your rosy countenance, never guessing it comes from a combination of alchemy and denial. No one asks what happens if you wipe your face with a white handkerchief, or why you flinch when the cat brushes against your cheek. Compliments are enough. They sustain you through the prickling, the itching, and the underlying worry that someday you'll sneeze and send a cloud of toxic dust wafting into polite company. By evening your face aches. Your colour is as bright as ever, and you've started to notice a faint metallic taste when you laugh. Still you persevere. A Victorian lady's greatest weapon is persistence, followed closely by access to a well-stocked apothecary. You blow a kiss at your reflection, careful not to smudge, and think, beauty may be fleeting, but with enough lead and mercury your cheeks could outlast your reputation. In this world that's almost as good as immortality, just significantly more hazardous. You want pearly whites? Swish with a dash of nitric acid for that dazzling, slightly dissolving smile. If your teeth start to wobble, just practice your mysterious closed mouth look. Dentists are for the rich, or the desperate. Your morning routine is a study in calculated risk. You gaze into your vanity mirror, lips pressed together, considering the options. A lady's smile is her greatest asset, your etiquette book insists. Of course, it doesn't mention that the price of this asset is a nightly rinse with a substance that could clean a coin, etch glass, and conveniently melt away years of enamel. But standards are standards. In Victorian England, a yellowed smile hints at poverty, bad habits, or, worst of all, a life spent outdoors. Unthinkable. You reach for the little bottle labelled Dr. Fairclough's Dental Elixir, with a reassuringly medical-looking label and an ingredient list you wisely avoid reading too closely. A quick whiff stings your eyes and nearly takes your breath away, a promising sign if you're after effectiveness rather than longevity. You pour a scant teaspoon into a china cup, add a splash of water, and steel yourself. The first swish is always the hardest. The taste is searing, metallic, and vaguely lemony, like a cleaning product that's lost its will to live. You try to hum as you swirl the liquid around your mouth, but all that escapes is a high-pitched squeak. The burning intensifies, and for a moment you're convinced you can feel your gums receding in real time. But that's the price for beauty. Pain is just proof that it's working. You spit discreetly into a lace-trimmed handkerchief, because in your house, spittoons are for men and socialists. You check your reflection, baring your teeth. They gleam with a brilliance that would make a pearl jealous and a jeweller suspicious. For a fleeting moment, you feel invincible, the very picture of Victorian radiance. Of course, this radiance comes with a catch. The enamel wears thin, your teeth ache in the cold, and on certain days your breath could cut glass. There's a reason portraits of society ladies often show them in demure, Mona Lisa-esque repose. It's the look of someone weighing the risk of smiling too wide against the certainty of a future filled with false teeth. If a tooth begins to wobble, you learn to pivot. A hand raised gracefully to your lips, an air of mystery, a new persona, the woman with secrets worth keeping, or at least worth not exposing to the room. You're not alone in your pursuit of dental glory. Gossip at tea often centres on whose teeth have taken and whose have gone. Your friend Lillian has adopted a fierce devotion to lemon juice rinses. Cleanse the teeth beautifully, she claims, though lately her speech has developed a slight lisp. Meanwhile, Lady Catherine is rumoured to chew chalk between courses, leaving a fine dusting across her napkin and the lingering sense that she's always been a bit too enthusiastic about geology. The truly desperate visit the dentist, an experience best described as a leap of faith and a test of pain tolerance. Dentists in Victorian England are men with iron tools, questionable diplomas, and a fondness for whiskey on both sides of the chair. If you're lucky, you'll leave with fewer teeth but a newfound appreciation for soft foods. If you're not, you'll leave in the company of several strong men who have been summoned to restrain you during the extraction. Either way, it's not a process anyone repeats by choice. So you avoid sticky sweets, chew with caution, and perfect the art of the demure smile. After all, mystery is attractive, and nothing is more mysterious than a lady who never ever opens her mouth in public. If someone comments on your reserve, you let them imagine a tragic romance, a vow of silence, or a continental education. Never let them know it's because your front tooth is hanging on by sheer willpower and social anxiety. In the end, a Victorian smile is less about joy and more about endurance. You bare your teeth for the world, hoping they last through dinner, dessert, and with any luck the rest of the season. And when the day comes that they don't, well, there's always wax, porcelain, and the comfort of knowing you suffered in the name of beauty just like everyone else. Beautiful hair means boiling it in ammonia, brushing it with pig fat, and styling it so high you risk altitude sickness. Bald spots. Hide them with a hairpiece, or just call them the latest Parisian trend. Every morning your hair routine is an act of willpower, creativity, and mild self-endangerment. You survey the battlefield, your dressing table, a clutter of combs, bristle brushes, bottles of dubious tonics, pins, and ribbons. The air is thick with the scent of lavender, rose oil, and, lurking beneath it all, something that smells suspiciously like a barnyard on a hot afternoon. The first step, the wash. Unlike modern times, daily washing is considered both unnecessary and frankly reckless. Instead, it's a bi-weekly event at best. The method? A mixture of rainwater and ammonia, yes, the kind used to scrub floors and occasionally bleach unfortunate fabrics. You pour a basinful, grit your teeth, and lean over as your maid gently soaks your scalp. The sting is memorable, your eyes water. Your ancestors are somewhere applauding your fortitude. Next comes the conditioning. Forget argan oil or keratin serum, you're reaching for lard, specifically pig fat, rendered and perfumed with a drop of jasmine to mask the meaty undertones. A generous dollop is worked through your lengths. It's sticky, slippery, and leaves your hands looking suspiciously well moisturized. This is the secret to Victorian shine, a protective layer of grease that repels water, dust, and, unfortunately, most suitors standing downwind. Time for brushing. Not a dainty casual affair, but a proper arm workout. 100 strokes a day, the beauty manuals insist, for hair as lustrous as a raven's wing. You tug, you pull, you dislodge yesterday's tangles, and the occasional pin left over from last night's updo. Sometimes you discover things best not mentioned. Crumbs from tea, a lost earring, once, horrifyingly, a small confused moth. Such is the price of volume. Then styling. The towering coiffures of the day aren't built in a moment. You summon your maid and begin the intricate ritual of braiding, twisting, and pinning. Padding, sometimes called rats, made from your own shed hair, or a conveniently donated bundle from the hair merchant, is used to create height and volume. If you're feeling especially grand, perhaps you add a plume, a faux flower, or a borrowed tiara. The goal? An updo that can be seen from the back of the ballroom and survives the quadrille. Of course, not all hair survives. If you notice thinning patches, you keep calm and reach for reinforcements. Hair pieces, wigs, falls, and false braids are as common as ribbons. They are styled, curled, and sometimes even rented for special occasions. The source of the hair? A subject best left unexplored. But rumour has it that a thriving trade in Paris is responsible for many a British lady's natural locks. Should all else fail, you turn your misfortune into high fashion. After all, what is a bald spot but a canvas for an elaborate hat, a velvet ribbon, or a strategically placed decorative comb? Last season's disaster is this season's innovation. Throughout it all, you maintain the poise expected of a Victorian lady. You smile, never scratching your scalp in public, and act as though your towering, slightly greasy hairdo is as natural as dew on the morning grass. Secretly, you pray for a light breeze rather than a stiff wind, and you avoid open flames at all costs. And so, you emerge from your boudoir each day, hair piled high, gleaming, and only mildly flammable. Is it comfortable? Of course not. Is it worth it? Absolutely, at least until fashion changes or you finally run out of pig fat. In Victorian England, a woman's hair is her crowning glory, even if it's a crown balanced precariously atop a monument to human stubbornness and creative hazard. You step into your weekly bath. Just don't slip. Victorian bath water is full of mysterious floating things, but the real risk is the soaps. Caustic, untested, and sometimes flavoured with a little arsenic for extra glow. The bath is a ritual, and not one for the faint of heart. Your maid fills the tub, lugging bucket after bucket of tepid water up 2 flights of stairs. By the time the tub is half full, the water has cooled to bracing, and the sediment has settled into a fine, gritty layer along the bottom. You watch a stray feather spin gracefully past a curious glob of something best left unidentified. It's a soothing sight if you squint and try not to breathe too deeply. Victorian hygiene is a paradox. Public health is on everyone's lips, but running water is still a dream for the next century. Bathing is an ordeal, best attempted once a week, or less if you're lucky enough to be born into the good old English tradition of using perfume to outwit germs. Today, however, you are feeling ambitious, or simply too itchy to delay further. Disrobing, you gingerly dip a toe into the bath, instantly regretting your enthusiasm. The temperature is somewhere between mountain stream and municipal fountain in February. Goosebumps erupt. You lower yourself, inch by shivering inch, until you're submerged up to your elbows, knees drawn in for self-preservation and dignity. The bathwater's embrace is less like silk, and more like a watery dare. Now comes the soap, an adventure in itself. You eye the collection on your bath tray, Madame Drusilla's complexion brick, guaranteed to remove stains, memories, and possibly skin. Violet-scented savon, more lye than lavender, and the ever-popular Enlightened Glow, which boasts a secret ingredient not disclosed on the label. You settle for the latter, reasoning that anything advertised as enlightening probably can't be all bad. The soap is gritty, yellowish, and hisses faintly as it hits the water. You scrub, only mildly alarmed as the sensation moves from refreshing to pepper spray. This, you remind yourself, is the price of beauty. Your skin tingles and then burns. You imagine the sensation is your pores opening and impurities fleeing, but the truth is that Victorian soap is mostly experimental chemistry, and you are the volunteer. A quick rinse leaves your arms red and your hands feeling strangely numb. You smile and nod to the mirror, ignoring the fact that your left elbow is now 2 shades lighter than the rest of you. As you wash your hair with a bucket and a prayer, more excitement follows. Victorian shampoos are usually homemade, involving egg yolks, gin, lemon juice, or even, on a particularly desperate day, turpentine. Your scalp sings with each application, but you persist. What's a little dizziness when the result is shine so bright you can read by it? Once clean, or at least cleaner, you face the final test, getting out of the tub without incident. Victorian baths are famously treacherous, slippery enamel, uneven floors, and soap residue combine to create a gauntlet more dangerous than ballroom dancing in stilettos. With great caution, you stand, clutch a towel, and make your escape. Victorious and slightly radioactive, you pat yourself dry with a rough linen towel, breathing in the subtle bouquet of lye, rosewater, and triumph. The ritual complete, you glow, literally and figuratively. There are rumours, of course. The neighbour who emerged from her bath pink as a lobster for a week, or Cousin Henry, whose new miracle soap left him hairless from the neck down. These are risks you accept in the name of civilization. In the end, cleanliness is next to godliness, or at least to danger. You survived another Victorian bath, battered but radiant, ready to face the world with skin so bright it might just stop traffic, at least until next week when you do it all again. Dressing up isn't just about style, it's about survival. You button yourself into layers dyed with arsenic green or mercury red. One good sweat and you're a walking chemical experiment. The brighter the dress, the higher the risk of sudden fainting. You stand before your wardrobe, surveying a rainbow of danger. The jewel tones call to you, emerald, sapphire, and crimson, each shade an achievement of modern science and a thinly veiled threat. Your favourite gown is a resplendent green, its fabric shimmering with an unnatural vibrance thanks to generous helpings of Sheely's green, an arsenic-based dye. It's the envy of your friends and the terror of every canary kept in the drawing room. No one knows why the birds keep mysteriously dropping dead, but your dress always gets compliments. The act of dressing itself is a production. Your maid helps you step into petticoats, then into layers of starched cotton and silk, each piece stiffer and heavier than the last. The corset is laced, the chemise arranged, and the skirts swish with an ominous rustle. By the time the bodice is fastened and the sleeves buttoned, you are encased in a cocoon of fabric and optimism. Your fingers tingle slightly from brushing against the vivid green trim, probably just excitement, or perhaps the early warning signs of mild arsenic absorption. Accessories are no safer. Gloves are a must, not only to project an image of dainty perfection, but also to prevent direct contact with the deadliest dyes. Fans, hats and ribbons are all saturated in fashion's finest toxins. The more elaborate the outfit, the greater the risk. Lead-based sequins, mercury-laced lace, and gilded brooches held together with something suspiciously sparkly. Every item whispers, "Look fabulous, but don't lick your fingers." As you parade through the parlour, the admiration is palpable, and so is the faint metallic tang in the air. Fashion is status, and the brightest colours signal money, taste, and, inevitably, a willingness to ignore doctors' advice. Men bow and women gossip, everyone eager to learn where you acquired such radiant attire. You smile, bathed in compliments, ignoring the slight dizziness and the urge to cough. Dancing at the ball is its own hazard. The warmth of the room, the press of bodies, and the glow of gaslight create the perfect conditions for your dress to work its chemical magic. You feel a bead of sweat run down your back, and for a moment you imagine it hissing as it soaks into the arsenic-laced fabric. Across the floor, you spot Lady Ellington, resplendent in a scarlet gown that rumour claims is dyed with actual mercury. She is the life of the party, until she's not, disappearing halfway through the second waltz, and later discovered fainted gracefully behind a potted fern. There are cautionary tales, the seamstress who stitched emerald ball gowns with bare hands and soon developed strange sores, the child who slept with her mother's hat ribbon and awoke with a mysterious rash, the fashion-forward gentleman whose vivid waistcoat brought on hallucinations and eventually a discreet medical leave. But for now, these are distant stories, cautionary footnotes in the ongoing saga of looking splendid at any cost. Before leaving the house, you spritz a little perfume, check your gloves for stains, and remind yourself to keep windows open. Arsenic vapour is less deadly when properly ventilated, or so the pamphlets say. You step out, radiant and just a little reckless, every movement a calculated risk for the sake of admiration. And if, by the end of the evening, you're a little paler, your heart fluttering in time with the violins and your feet tingling beneath all those layers, you chalk it up to excitement. After all, in Victorian England, true style isn't just about turning heads, it's about living dangerously, one toxic thread at a time. No outfit is complete without a hat stiffened with mercury nitrate. It's stylish, it's toxic, and it's why you can't remember your own birthday by the age of 40. Mad as a hatter isn't just a phrase, it's your family's new reality. You stand before the hat stand like it's a sacred altar. Hats in Victorian society aren't optional, they are declarations. They tell the world who you are, what class you belong to, and how willing you are to slowly poison yourself for fashion. Your favourite topper sits proudly at the front, tall, sleek, perfectly shaped, the kind of hat that makes you look like you own property and have never once carried your own groceries. It's elegant, it's expensive, it's also quite literally infused with mercury. Because here's the secret. Felt hats don't stiffen themselves. Hat makers used mercury nitrate in the felting process, especially for beaver fur, because it made the fibres bind beautifully. It also made the hat industry one of the most toxic workplaces imaginable. A man could craft hats all day, and as a bonus gradually lose his mind by Tuesday. But you don't think about that. You just think, this looks good with your coat. You lift the hat carefully as though it might bite. It smells faintly of damp wool, old perfume, and something sharp underneath. That metallic chemical whisper of industrial progress. You place it on your head and admire yourself in the mirror. Instant refinement. Instant danger. The hat completes the look. The outfit is nothing without it. Without a hat, you're just a person. With a hat, you're a Victorian person with purpose. Outside, everyone else is similarly topped. Bowler hats, bonnets, elaborate feathered creations that look like someone lost a fight with an exotic bird. The streets are full of stylish silhouettes, all pretending this is normal, all pretending their accessories aren't quietly working against them. You walk through London with your mercury crown held high, and somewhere, deep in the history of hats, a hatter is twitching. Let's talk about hatters for a moment. The phrase mad as a hatter didn't come from nowhere. Hat makers were famously exposed to mercury fumes for years. They developed tremors, slurred speech, mood swings, hallucinations, and memory loss. They'd shake uncontrollably. They'd become anxious, irritable, paranoid. Some couldn't stop talking, some couldn't stop crying. Some stared into space like they'd seen the future and didn't like what it looked like. Mercury poisoning was so common it had a name, Hatter's Shakes. So when someone at a party begins laughing too loudly at nothing, or forgetting what year it is, everyone chuckles nervously and says, "Oh, how eccentric." But deep down they know, that's mercury, baby. The real absurdity is that you're not even the one making the hat, you're just wearing the final product, but the danger trickles outward. Mercury doesn't stay politely in the workshop. It clings, it lingers. It becomes part of the fashionable world, woven into the very idea of elegance. You tip your hat to a passerby. A perfect gentleman's gesture. Also possibly a small dose of neurotoxin dust drifting into the air. Lovely. At home, your aunt complains she's been having headaches and strange dreams. Your uncle has developed a tremor in his hand. Your cousin keeps forgetting where she left her embroidery needle, but the hats look fantastic, and that's what matters. Victorian fashion is full of these bargains. Trade your long-term health for immediate social approval. Exchange your nervous system for a nice silhouette. It's capitalism, but with feathers. By the end of the day, you remove your hat and place it back on the stand. Your hair is flattened, your scalp itches slightly, and you feel a little tired, or maybe a little foggy, but you looked impeccable, and in Victorian England, that's the goal, because better to be admired today than to be comfortable tomorrow. And besides, if you do eventually go mad, at least you'll do it in a very good hat. You step outside, straight into London's infamous pea soup fog, a delightful blend of coal smoke, horse dung and industrial runoff. Your white face powder starts melting in the drizzle, leaving you with streaks that would terrify a modern makeup artist. The air is thick enough to chew, a pale greenish soup that swallows sound and softens the world's edges until you feel like you're wandering through a slightly poisonous dream. Each breath fills your lungs with a cocktail of ash, river mist, and the unmistakable tang of yesterday's industrial optimism. The street disappears into the haze, carriages are reduced to faint, ghostly shadows, and the comforting clip-clop of hooves is punctuated by the squelch of boots in what you dearly hope is just mud. You clutch your shawl tighter, face angled down. It's less to keep warm, more to shelter your carefully curated complexion from the sky's relentless attack. Already you can feel the powder shifting, forming rivers of pale streaks down your cheeks. You brush at your face with a gloved hand, only to realize you've succeeded in smearing it more, a kind of abstract art piece that shouts fashion victim to everyone in your foggy vicinity. It's not just the air that's out to get you. The pavement is a gauntlet of hazards, piles of horse droppings lurking beneath the mist, suspicious puddles that threaten to swallow a shoe hole, and mysterious lumps that squish in all the wrong ways. Every step is a gamble. Will you emerge triumphant, or will you lose a boot and your dignity to a puddle of unknown origin? You pass a lamplighter, barely visible in the gloom, extending his pole like a knight in some tragic, sooty fairy tale. He nods at you, eyes streaming from the smoke, skin streaked with the same grey ash that now decorates your own nose. The world smells of burning coal and cold sweat, a scent that will follow you all the way home and stubbornly cling to your petticoats for days. Crossing the street becomes an act of courage. Somewhere, a carriage emerges suddenly from the fog, the driver's voice muffled and urgent, the horses wide-eyed and frantic. You scurry across, only to stumble against the curb, your skirts soaking up a mysterious chilly ooze. With luck, the arsenic green dye in your hem will sterilize whatever you just stepped in. With less luck, it will just burn a new set of holes in your stockings. As you continue your walk, you spot other women faring no better. Their faces bear the same patchwork of melting powder, their bonnets droop in the damp, and their parasols are valiantly attempting to block both drizzle and disaster. You exchange sympathetic glances, silent communication among survivors, before each vanishes again into the yellow haze. On the corner, a newspaper boy hacks a cough worthy of a man twice his age and shouts the headlines, though his words are lost in the swirl. The only clear thing is the constant, omnipresent hum of a city refusing to pause for a little thing like poison air. After all, this is London, the metropolis where you dress to impress and hope your outfit, or your lungs, can withstand the journey. By the time you arrive at your destination, be it tea, market, or the world's bravest beauty salon, your cheeks are mottled, your skirt is freckled with suspicious stains, and your once immaculate hair carries the faint aroma of burnt coal and optimism. You smooth your dress, repowder your face in the entryway, and pretend you've never heard of pea soup unless it's being served in a silver tureen. You survived another Victorian walk. Your shoes are heavier, your lungs are dirtier, and your powder is a lost cause, but your head is held high. Because in this era, you don't just face the filth, you sashay through it with style. How do you flirt when half your face is numb from cosmetics? With wit, with charm, and with a steady hand on your fainting couch. Just don't let anyone kiss your cheek, it might actually be radioactive. Victorian courtship is a high-stakes performance, a delicate dance played out under the gaze of chaperones, gossips, and the looming threat of spontaneous chemical combustion. You sit in the drawing room, heart fluttering with anticipation, and possibly a dash of mercury-induced palpitations, awaiting the arrival of your gentleman caller. You've already survived the morning's beauty gauntlet, the lead-based foundation, the arsenic-tinged powder, and the blush so toxic you're not sure if it's stinging or just quietly dissolving your pores. The parlour is stifling, thick with the fragrance of lilies, a tar of roses, and whatever volatile compounds are currently leaking from your hair pomade. You've carefully arranged yourself on the fainting couch, an essential accessory in a world where surprise, excitement, and corset-induced hypoxia are all daily hazards. You take shallow, dignified breaths, lips arranged in a demure smile that says, "I'm both approachable and unlikely to faint, at least not until the fourth compliment." Your suitor arrives, bearing flowers and the tentative air of a man who's read too many etiquette guides and not enough toxicology pamphlets. He bows, you curtsy, and the dance begins. Conversation in Victorian England is its own kind of sparring, witty, subtle, and full of code. Your words are chosen with care, clever enough to entertain, but gentle enough not to reveal that you haven't felt the left side of your face since breakfast. He compliments your complexion, so pale, so radiant, so slightly luminescent in the candlelight, and you thank him, careful not to smile too wide for fear of cracking your foundation. He admires your delicate hands, not realizing you've lost all feeling in 2 fingers thanks to the arsenic green dye on your gloves. You nod graciously and angle your face just so, ensuring the sunlight catches your best, least numb side. Tea is served. You delicately grasp the cup, steady as a surgeon, praying you don't leave a crimson smear of lead-laced lipstick on the porcelain. Your suitor's eyes widen, perhaps at your grace, or perhaps because he's catching a faint whiff of belladonna perfume and slowly losing his peripheral vision. You sip, you smile, you deflect questions about your hobbies, embroidery and existential dread mostly, and try not to slide off the couch in a swoon. The conversation turns to poetry, art, the merits of keeping canaries, bad idea if you're wearing arsenic green, and the weather, always a safe choice, less likely to provoke a coughing fit. You offer the gentle encouragement of a soft laugh, even though your lips are numb and your cheek has begun to itch alarmingly. He leans in, hopeful, and you pull back charmingly, apologetically, explaining that your doctor has warned you against sudden movements and unnecessary touching. He seems impressed by your devotion to medical advice. Behind you, your chaperone coughs discreetly, signalling that the allotted time for mild poisoning and light flirtation is drawing to a close. Your suitor rises, bows again, and you return the gesture, careful not to dislodge your eyebrow wig or send a cloud of face powder drifting across the room. As he leaves, he presses your gloved hand and whispers, "Until next time." You nod, already plotting which new cosmetic concoction you'll try tomorrow, one that promises irresistible allure, or at least the ability to feel your own nose for the duration of the visit. You collapse back onto the fainting couch, triumphant. You survived another round of Victorian courtship, wit intact, beauty undiminished, and only minor symptoms of low-level chemical exposure. In the poison age, that's as good as true love gets. At dinner, you daintily avoid the shellfish and the unfiltered water. Death by cholera isn't cute. But you can't escape the arsenic-laced desserts. The only thing deadlier than the food is the gossip. The evening begins with anticipation and a careful tightening of your corset. You glide down the candlelit hallway, clutching your invitation like a talisman and rehearsing the day's headlines in your mind. Someone's cousin eloped with a footman, and the Prime Minister's wife was spotted buying suspicious face powder in Bond Street. It's best to arrive prepared. In Victorian society, a sharp tongue is nearly as valuable as a sharp jawline. The parlour is awash with scents. Roast beef, perfumed handkerchiefs, and the faint tang of gaslight. You float from group to group, exchanging greetings and air kisses, your cheeks pinched with a mixture of rouge and nerves. In the distance, the clink of silver signals the start of the meal. You pray you'll be seated next to someone charming, or at least too distracted by their own food poisoning to ask probing questions about your family's recent unfortunate incidents. The first course arrives, oysters on cracked ice. You smile politely, nudge them to the edge of your plate, and vow never to trust seafood this far from the coast. The water is poured, crystal clear but full of invisible dangers. You feign a delicate cough, waving it away, and request sherry instead. Across the table, Lady Appleton drinks deeply, bragging that her constitution can best any cholera germ. You make a mental note to check on her in the morning, or at the funeral. Next comes the roast, beef, lamb, and some unfortunate bird with a glaze so glossy it might double as varnish. You nibble the edges, watching for suspicious pinkness, and listen as Lord Percival holds forth on the virtues of industrial progress. No one mentions the fact that half the city's water pipes are made of lead. To do so would be uncouth, and besides, you're distracted by the parade of sauces, mustard, horseradish, a mysterious brown that could be gravy or a chemistry experiment gone awry. The main event, though, is dessert. Trifle, blancmange, and cakes frosted in a green so vivid it glows under the gaslight. You know the secret. That beautiful colour is thanks to a dash of arsenic, added for that fashionable fairy tale touch. You're not sure if eating it makes you a trendsetter or a medical curiosity. Around you, guests take tiny nervous bites, pretending not to notice the tingle on their tongues. Someone coughs. Someone else laughs a little too loudly, perhaps hoping to mask the growing numbness in their lips. As plates are cleared, the real game begins. The ladies fan themselves, gathering in little knots to share rumours disguised as compliments. The men retreat to cigars and brandy, but the walls have ears, and so do the servants, whose memory for scandal is unmatched. You watch as Mrs. Wainwright drops her spoon, her gaze darting to Lady Ellison, whose new gown is so green it almost hurts to look at. Was it dyed in Paris, or just in someone's backyard? The speculation is endless, the malice sugar-coated and as finely layered as the trifle. By the time you leave the table, you've survived 12 courses, 3 potential medical emergencies, and 4 social faux pas. You're exhausted, but glowing. Whether from arsenic, adrenaline, or the aftershocks of Lady Appleton's oyster bravado, it's hard to say. You float homeward, promising yourself that next time you'll eat before the party and just pretend to nibble. In Victorian England, dinner parties are less about the food and more about the spectacle. Who fainted, who flirted, and who will live to host the next deadly soiree. You smooth your skirts, reapply your powder, and savour the small victory of leaving with your dignity and your pulse intact. The paler, the better. You join your friends for a night of who can look most like a marble statue. Winner gets admiration and, eventually, a memorial plaque. This is not just a gathering, it's an unspoken contest. The Society of Pale meets in Mrs. Plumley's drawing room, which has helpfully painted the colour of old bone to accentuate everyone's best features, namely the absence of any. The candles are kept dim and the curtains drawn, so that even the faintest flush is immediately suspect. A single rosy cheek can undo months of careful neglect and send you tumbling from grace. So everyone arrives powdered, painted, and on the brink of anemia. You settle onto a stiff sofa between Miss Catamole, who is famous for her porcelain complexion, and rumoured to subsist on little more than boiled oats and good intentions, and Mrs. Lark, who claimed she once turned down a proposal because her suitor's skin had too much circulation. It's clear, there are no prizes for vitality here. The ideal is a complexion that says I haven't seen the sun since Waterloo. As the evening begins, the powdering commences. Each lady opens her vanity case and produces jars of face whiteners, lead, rice flour, chalk, and the latest innovation, opaline cream, which promises to obliterate all natural hues. You dab, blend, and buff with competitive zeal, occasionally glancing sideways at your rivals to gauge your odds. Conversation revolves around strategies for maximum pallor. I never leave my room before dusk, says one. My physician recommends weekly bloodletting, boasts another. Someone coughs delicately, possibly from tuberculosis, possibly from the arsenic floating in the air. Every mirror in the house is employed, and every mirror is a battlefield. You examine your own reflection, smooth, ghostly, and faintly luminescent, with only a trace of blue under the eyes to suggest you're still technically alive. Your lips are blotted to the palest possible shade, your eyebrows barely penciled in. The effect is ethereal, otherworldly, and frankly, a little alarming. Still, you are not alone. Around you, faces peer from the shadows like busts in a mausoleum, each one whiter than the last. There's talk of extreme measures: lemon juice, vinegar, a spot of laudanum for that glassy-eyed poet's daughter Look. One ambitious young lady claims she's taken up knitting indoors simply to avoid the horror of sunlit windows. Mrs. Plumley herself unveils her latest secret: sleeping with thin slices of cucumber layered across her cheeks, in hopes that the next morning will bring a touch more translucence. Everyone nods, making mental notes. The competition is fierce. Then, of course, comes the moment of judgment. Each participant glides to the centre of the room, stands beneath the sallow chandelier, and turns slowly for inspection. There are murmurs of appreciation for Miss Catamole, whose pallor rivals that of a fine marble bust, and a gentle gasp when Mrs. Lark reveals her newest trick, a scarf soaked in vinegar and tied loosely about her throat for an entire week. You do your best to appear languid, mysterious, and above all, not faint. The winner is declared Miss Catamole by virtue of her positively spectral glow. She accepts the compliments with a weak smile and a subtle wobble, either from pride or iron deficiency. The rest of you sigh, reach for another dusting of powder, and remind yourselves that true beauty is ephemeral and, if you're not careful, terminal. The evening ends with polite applause and the exchange of recipes for chalk-based pudding. You walk home under the safety of a heavy veil, proud of your efforts, determined to come back next time even paler, even closer to the ideal of lifeless loveliness. In the secret society of pale, the only colour allowed is envy. And who knows, if you work hard enough at it, maybe someday you'll win the highest honour of all, a marble likeness in the family tomb, admired for centuries for your commitment to the cause. Beauty shops are everywhere, selling potions with labels like guaranteed to make you radiant or else. You try a sample, your skin tingles, then turns purple. The shopkeeper says that's a sign it's working. You've barely made it 2 blocks on Bond Street before being lured by a window brimming with jars, bottles and tins, each one promising miracles. Names like Dr. Fothergill's Miracle Youth Elixir, Miss Pettigrew's Elixir of Loveliness, and the genuine Parisian Fading Cream, now with a real Parisian, compete for attention, all arranged beneath a sign that shouts, "Transform yourself. Chemistry has never been safer." You step inside. The air is thick with the mingled scents of rosewater, carbolic acid, and a faint undercurrent of burnt hair. The counter is manned by a shopkeeper in a spotless apron, his hair carefully slicked back, a man who looks like he hasn't blinked since the last Jubilee. He greets you with an enthusiasm only found in people who are paid on commission, gesturing with a flourish to the dazzling array of products. You begin your tour. First, the arsenic complexion pills, for the lady who wants to glow from the inside out. Next, liquid pearl lightener, which boasts the ability to erase freckles, moles, and, according to the label, all unfortunate traces of heredity. You raise an eyebrow, but the shopkeeper assures you the latest studies, performed by his cousin, show a remarkable decrease in visible flaws and long-term memory. Further down the counter, you encounter Madame Lavoisier's lavender lotion, guaranteed to refresh the spirit and bleach unsightly spots. The sample is applied with a cotton pad, and the effect is immediate. Your skin feels cold, then hot, then oddly numb, as if your face has briefly left the country. That's the tonic working on your nerves, the shopkeeper beams. You glance in the mirror and notice a distinct purple tint creeping across your jaw. The shopkeeper frowns for only a second before recovering. Marvellous. That means your skin has character. You'll be the talk of every salon in London. Onward you go. There are powders and rouges, each promising to be more natural than the real thing, and eyebrow pencils that double as water erasers. A shelf displays bottles of belladonna brightener, complete with a warning, not for use before operating heavy machinery or reading small print. The shopkeeper eagerly spritzes a new scent, Nightshade Bouquet, in your direction. The room spins. Powerful, isn't it? He says, as if fainting is a sign of refinement. Around you, ladies browse, sample, and compare horror stories. Miss Hastings is looking for a lotion that will remove the sun entirely. Lady Pickering requests a hair restorer that won't cause any more incidents. The shopkeeper, unflappable, recommends Professor Bleek's baldness banisher, which, he whispers, works even on gentlemen. The secret, he confides, is in the formula, mostly mercury and positive thinking. You consider a final jar eternal youth balm which claims to reverse the ravages of time, scandal and poor lighting. The sample goes on cool and for a moment you feel hopeful. Then the tingling returns and your reflection glistens oddly, as if you've been shellacked. The shopkeeper assures you the shine is proof the product is sealing in youth, locking out disappointment. You decide to pass. With a slightly numb face and a purse lighter by a few shillings, you make your escape. Outside, the breeze feels sharp against your chemically altered skin. You pat your cheeks, vowing to embrace your natural beauty, at least until you pass the next cosmetic counter with a fresh round of promises. In Victorian England, snake oil salesmen are the real beauty queens, and every day a new potion, powder or cream is waiting to turn hopeful customers into walking, talking advertisements for either flawless skin or a very memorable rash. Either way, you'll certainly get noticed. You go to the doctor complaining of headaches, muscle weakness, and a sudden urge to faint stylishly. The doctor prescribes more arsenic and recommends less sunlight. Modern medicine, Victorian edition. The doctor's office is a shrine to science, or at least to whatever passes for science this decade. The air is a strange cocktail of camphor, coal dust, and a scent that might be formaldehyde, but could just as easily be someone's lunch. You sit perched on the edge of a cold wooden chair, hands folded primly in your lap, hat slightly askew from the exertion of crossing town, without breaking into a sweat and ruining your complexion. The doctor enters, a man of serious eyebrows and mysterious stains on his waistcoat, brandishing a notebook already filled with alarming observations. He asks you to list your symptoms. You demur, but he insists, so you recount your recent troubles. Persistent headaches, brittle fingernails, a fluttering heart, and the curious habit of swooning gracefully at precisely 3:15 each afternoon. He scribbles, nods, and asks if you've recently experienced the vapours, the miseries, or a sudden and unaccountable desire for French novels. You admit to the first two, deny the third. French novels are notorious for inducing improper thoughts and spontaneous nosebleeds. He leans in, peers at your skin, and makes a noise somewhere between admiration and concern. Your pallor is exquisite, he remarks, but perhaps a touch more arsenic would really set it off. You nod solemnly, and I would avoid direct sunlight lest you spoil the effect. He taps your wrist, measures your pulse, with the confidence of a man who hasn't washed his hands since the Crimean War, and declares your condition to be a case of nervous beauty, a common ailment among ladies who care too much about looking unwell. The cure, he assures you, is both simple and elegant. You must continue your arsenic wafers, up the dose of lead-based face powder, and for good measure try a tincture of laudanum in the evenings. Sleep, he says, is best taken between noon and dusk, ideally in a darkened room filled with violets and free from marital conversation. For the muscle weakness, he prescribes a brisk walk around the drawing room, never outdoors, and a diet rich in blancmange, calf's foot jelly, and the occasional sip of beef tea. He offers you a pamphlet titled How to Faint with Grace, written by his wife, and recommends carrying smelling salts at all times, for both emergencies and social effect. Fainting, he intones, is a natural expression of delicate constitution, and should be encouraged at least twice per social season. He provides a recipe for homemade smelling salts, which on inspection is mostly ammonia and dried lavender. It is at least more pleasant than most of your beauty creams. You leave with a purse full of bottles, arsenic pills, a jar of mercury ointment for your cheeks, for that irresistible glow, and a powder that promises to banish all visible veins and most unpleasant emotions. He instructs you to avoid excitement, sudden laughter, and all strenuous activity, including reading anything more exciting than the shipping news. Above all, he cautions, trust the science of beauty, but not too much science. Outside, the sun is shining, but you heed the doctor's advice and pull your veil lower, sidestepping both the light and a particularly robust-looking street hawker. You feel reassured. Your symptoms are not only common but fashionable. Your treatments are guaranteed to cause more symptoms, and thus more treatments, and your doctor is universally respected for his discretion and truly impressive moustache. In Victorian England, medicine and beauty are tangled together in a merry-go-round of fainting couches, unregulated pills, and the eternal promise that if you just try one more remedy, you'll be the envy of every woman and the sole survivor at every party. Good luck. You book a spa day, except relaxation means being covered in mud, pricked by leeches, and sipping a shot of laudanum. It's less self-care and more self-endangerment with friends. Spa day in Victorian England isn't about cucumber water and gentle pan flute music. It's about submitting yourself to every restorative the age can offer, most of which would terrify a modern insurance adjuster. You and your closest friends, each more pale, fashionable and faintly unwell than the last, arrive at the spa wrapped in shawls and anticipation. The room smells of old wood, medicinal herbs, and the distant promise of questionable science. You're ushered into a dim chamber where a row of tubs steams ominously. First up is the mud bath sold as a purifying earth embrace. The attendant gestures with a trowel, encouraging you to climb into the lukewarm muck. You sink, instantly cold, your dress billowing around your knees as the mud squelches up between your toes. It draws out the humours, the attendant says, as if this explains the entire situation. The sensation is somewhere between soothing and slightly panicked. You attempt conversation with your neighbour, Miss Elworthy, who has already lost a shoe and possibly a ring to the depths of her own tub. After the mud, it's time for leeches. No spa day is complete without a few well-placed parasites. The spa's medical expert arrives, pockets brimming with squirming glass jars. Leeches, you are told, will restore your complexion, treat faintness, and possibly prevent romantic disappointment. You sit very still as a slippery little friend is deposited behind your ear. The sensation is cold, then ticklish, then faintly horrifying as it attaches. Miss Elworthy shrieks, which is considered both therapeutic and polite. With the leeches working diligently, you're invited to relax in the hydrotherapy chamber, which is Victorian code for let's see how long you can tolerate alternating blasts of hot and icy water. Attendants with ladles and towels stand ready, their eyes gleaming with professional detachment. You brace yourself as waves of water are poured, each more invigorating than the last, until your skin tingles and your corset feels 2 sizes too small. Somewhere you hear Mrs. Linton giggling hysterically. She's reached the emotional release portion of the programme, which the spa encourages and bills extra for. Now, thoroughly chilled and slightly dizzy, you're wrapped in flannel and guided to the recovery lounge. Here, a footman offers a generous glass of laudanum, a popular Victorian remedy for everything from headaches to heartbreaks. You take a cautious sip. It tastes of bitter flowers and regret, but within minutes a wave of warm indifference washes over you. The aches recede, your mood lifts, and even the memory of the leech on your earlobe seems oddly charming. The conversation drifts to the latest beauty disasters in society, whose arsenic wafers are working too well, and how Miss Elworthy's cousins survived last year's experimental cucumber facial. To round out your experience, you're encouraged to try the electrical rejuvenator, a contraption resembling a cross between a birdcage and a torture device. It promises to invigorate the nerves. You hold the handles while the attendant cranks a lever, sending a jolt through your fingertips and up your arms. For a moment, your vision sparkles. Marvellous, isn't it? The spa owner beams. 1 session per week, and you'll never be mistaken for a healthy person again. You emerge from your spa day exhausted, glowing, and just a bit lighter, mostly in blood and bodily fluids. Your friends assure you it was a triumph of modern beauty science, and you nod in agreement, already daydreaming of your next appointment, or perhaps just a very long nap. In Victorian England, pampering is not for the weak. It's for those bold enough to trust a leech, brave enough to wear mud in public, and optimistic enough to believe that every questionable cure brings you 1 step closer to true beauty, or at least a very good story for the next dinner party. The opera is the place to be seen, and to collapse dramatically. Is it your tight corset, the perfume, or the arsenic biscuits? The audience applauds your delicate brush with mortality. A night at the opera in Victorian London is no mere social event. It's the battleground where fashion, status, and the limits of human endurance meet under the flicker of gaslight. You arrive in a gleaming carriage, escorted by your mother, who is determined to display both your prospects and your pallor to the city's sharpest eyes. Your gown is exquisite, a confection of silk and arsenic green velvet, paired with gloves so tight you briefly lose feeling in 3 fingers before the overture begins. You float up the red-carpeted stairs, pausing for maximum visibility. Chandeliers blaze overhead, heating the crowded foyer until it's just shy of tropical. The air is thick with perfume, heady clouds of belladonna, musk, and the lingering ghost of coal smoke. Everywhere, women fan themselves furiously, hoping to dispel the humidity before their face powder starts to melt in tragic, ghostly streaks. You take your seat in the family's box, posture impeccable, corset laces pulled so tight your ribs sing in harmony with the orchestra. The music swells, and so does the temperature. You glance around. Lady Farnsworth is already dabbing at her brow. Miss Cattermole's fan is fluttering like a startled dove, and Lord Wyndham's new companion is perched on the edge of her chair, looking both radiant and faintly cyanotic. The first act passes in a dreamy haze. Every few minutes you test your grip on consciousness. A shallow breath, a delicate shift in your seat, a careful sip of reviving cordial, brandy and sugar mostly, but no one asks questions. At intermission, you stand and feel your knees tremble, a signal that it's almost time for the main event. The second act begins. The drama on stage is rivaled only by the drama in the boxes. Lady Appleton leans too far forward, sways, and is quietly escorted out by her husband, who pretends not to notice the faint green tint on her gloves. A sharp, sweet tray of confections is passed around, biscuits dusted with arsenic for that fashionable glow. You nibble politely, feeling your head grow light, your vision a touch sparkly. And then it happens. The aria rises to its crescendo, and you, overcome by heat, hunger, and 3 hours of shallow breathing, sway gently to the left. Your fan slips from your hand. The women beside you gasp, your mother clutches your arm, and you execute a flawless Victorian feint, graceful, slow motion, all sigh and soft thud. For a moment the music pauses. The conductor glances up. Someone whispers, "How elegant!" The audience murmurs with admiration. No one is surprised. Indeed, they expected it. In the circles you frequent, to faint at the opera is to achieve a certain social currency. Did you see Miss Whitby's swoon in Act 2? They will say for weeks. She is the picture of refinement. Even the sopranos envy your timing. You're revived with a dash of smelling salts, the sharp sting of ammonia bringing you back to yourself. Your cheeks are pale, your pulse fluttering, and your reputation for delicacy secured. You're led gently into the foyer for fresh air and more brandy, pausing only to assure the curious that you are in fact quite all right, just overcome by the sheer beauty of the music. By evening's end, you have triumphed, admired, envied, and possibly in mild cardiac distress. Your mother is proud, your rivals are green, with envy or arsenic hard to tell, and your diary has gained another splendid tale of survival in the face of couture and composition. In Victorian England, true fashion isn't just about looking the part, it's about knowing exactly when to drop the curtain. And at the opera, a dramatic feint is the final unforgettable act. Fashion doesn't stop at the grave. Black lace, heavy veils, and makeup that lasts longer than most marriages. She looked so peaceful, they say, possibly because the mortician used less lead this time. Death in Victorian England is not just a tragedy, it's an occasion. The news of a passing spreads quickly, not just for sorrow but for the fashion opportunities that follow. A proper funeral is as much about appearances as any society ball, only now the dress code is ironclad. Black, black, and, if you dare to be bold, a whisper of lavender for the second month of mourning. You stand in front of your wardrobe, bypassing emeralds, sapphires, and arsenic green for yards of sombre crepe and the weightiest velvet you own. Dressing for a funeral is serious business. Layers upon layers of black, stiff petticoats, gloves, and the all-important veil, yards of netting heavy enough to obscure your tears, or just your rolling eyes. Each piece is meant to signal piety, respect, and, of course, financial solvency. The more elaborate the outfit, the more devoted the mourner, or so society will whisper, lips pressed to gloved hands. The transformation doesn't end with clothes. The face must match the mood. Pale foundation, untouched by rouge, lips carefully blotted. If you look as though you've spent weeks shut away from the sun, suffering nobly, you are doing it right. For those called to the casket too soon, there are special preparations. Morticians, part artist, part chemist, apply layer upon layer of makeup, ensuring the dearly departed look restful, even if, in life, they were anything but. Lead-based powders are favoured for their longevity. A well-prepared face can weather days of viewing, the makeup surviving through tears, weather, and nosy relatives peering far too close. You arrive at the church, the procession a parade of black-edged handkerchiefs, sombre hats, and the slow shuffle of heavy skirts. The air is filled with the scent of lilies, wax, and a whiff of camphor. part floral, part funereal. The wails of the professional mourners blend with the muffled sniffles of the family, all choreographed with the precision of a dance. Even the pallbearers are dressed for the part, coats immaculate, faces solemn. Inside, you steal glances at your fellow mourners. There is competition, of course, whose crepe is the darkest, whose gloves are the softest, whose veil is the longest and most artfully draped. Children are scrubbed, cheeks pinched to the palest shade, boys stiff in miniature suits, and girls nearly vanishing beneath ruffled black bonnets. It's a masterclass in suffering, staged for both the living and the dead. The viewing itself is a performance. You file past the open casket, where the guest of honour lies resplendent in their own final ensemble, perhaps lace, perhaps silk, almost certainly stitched for the occasion. The face is peaceful, pale, and a bit too perfect, lips arranged in a dignified smile. You lean in for a closer look. They did a wonderful job, someone whispers, so lifelike. You nod, privately relieved the mortician resisted the temptation to use the new pink powder that caused Lady Throckmorton's unfortunate afterlife rash. Afterwards, the reception is a blur of sponge cake, weak tea, and strategic condolences. Gossip buzzes beneath the dirges. Who or what? Who cried prettiest? Who might be next? You note Miss Pembroke's daring jet bead earrings, a scandal, as jewellery is strictly forbidden for first mourning. Someone compliments your veil's length, and you accept with a gracious, practised nod. When the day finally ends, you peel off the mourning finery with a sigh. Your skin is chalky, your eyes red, but your reputation as a truly devoted mourner is secure. And as you drift off to sleep, you wonder, if style lasts beyond the grave, does the powder too? Perhaps that's why Victorian ghosts are always so pale. In the end, you know one thing for certain. In this society, even death is just another chance to dress to impress. You inherit a treasure chest of Victorian beauty aids. A quick check reveals half a band, the other half are radioactive. You consider using them until the lid glows in the dark. The chest arrives one rainy afternoon, borne by two slightly anxious footmen who deposit it in your sitting room and depart with the air of men who've just delivered a haunted artifact. You approach with curiosity and trepidation. The box itself is a relic. Brass corners, a lock in the shape of a rose, and the faintest whiff of camphor and ancient powder drifting out with each breath. Opening it, you're greeted by a museum of ancestral ambition. There's a velvet roll of brushes, their bristles tinged with the faded pinks and alarming reds of past fashion. Bottles with stoppers so tightly wedged you suspect they're holding in not just liquids, but spirits. Tins of powder labelled in looping script, Madame Thistlewood's whitening paste, Dr. Sallow's complexion tablets, and ominously, belladonna drops for bewitching gaze. You pick up a compact, its silver lid etched with flowers. Inside, the powder glimmers with a faint green tinge, the infamous shade of arsenic. Next to it is a lipstick in a disturbingly vibrant coral. The ingredient list, helpfully provided on the back in microscopic print, includes words like carmine, sublimate, and for external use only. Consult a physician if ingested, inhaled, or admired for too long. The collection is both a time capsule and a health hazard. You spot a tiny glass vial, still half full of a thick syrupy liquid, laudanum, the Victorian answer to everything from headaches to heartbreaks. Tucked underneath is a sachet of dried lavender, included perhaps as an afterthought, or possibly as a warning. Curiosity gets the better of you. You uncap a bottle of Parisian night essence, a fragrance so potent it could strip wallpaper. The air fills with a scent that is equal parts flowers, attic, and ozone. You cough. Your cat flees the room. The ghost of your grandmother is probably shaking her head. At the bottom of the chest, wrapped in yellowing silk, you find the crown jewel, a handheld mirror. The glass is fogged, but when you polish it, your reflection shimmers back at you, slightly blurred, a touch haunted, and suspiciously radiant. You wonder how many generations have powdered, painted, and perfumed themselves in this very glass. How many family legends began with a dab of rouge from this very tin, or ended with a fainting spell brought on by a few too many arsenic wafers? You consider actually trying the products. The lipstick is bright and tempting. The face powder promises a pearl-like pallor. But then you notice when you close the lid, the edge glows ever so gently in the evening gloom. Suddenly, you're not so eager for an authentic Victorian beauty experience. After all, you quite like having all your organs working and your hair not falling out in clumps. You pack everything back with care, preserving the history but leaving the radioactivity undisturbed. Perhaps you'll put the set on display, a cautionary tale behind glass. Friends will admire your vintage decor, never suspecting that a single dab could send them to the hospital or the afterlife. Still, you can't help feeling a connection to all those past beauties. The longing for a better complexion, a bolder lip, or the perfect pale brow. The willingness to risk a little, okay, a lot, for the fleeting promise of admiration. It's a family tradition, passed down in every brittle brush and glowing jar. And so, with a gentle click, you close the chest and thank your lucky stars for modern beauty products, most of which only promise mild regret, not full-blown radiation poisoning. You light a candle, crack a window, and whisper a thank you to Grandma for her legacy, her nerve, and most importantly for not leaving you her favourite recipes. Because in Victorian England, beauty fades, but hazardous heirlooms are forever. At the end of the day, you finally crawl into bed, hoping to wake up prettier and, crucially, still alive. Your dreams are a swirl of pale faces, bright cheeks, and the distant, comforting thought that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow you'll skip the arsenic. You stretch out on cool linen sheets, the faint scent of lavender wafting up from a sachet tucked under your pillow. The moonlight slips through a crack in the curtains, brushing over your vanity, an altar to the day's efforts, the jars of powder, the rouge tin, the half-empty vial of belladonna, all waiting quietly for their next turn. You listen to the soft ticking of the clock on the mantel and the distant clatter of carriage wheels, reminders that London never really sleeps, not even when you desperately want to. As your body relaxes, you review your day's beauty calculations. Did you blend your lead foundation well enough at the jawline? Was your belladonna too bold, or just the right side of dangerous? Did anyone notice the spot where your eyebrow wig slipped? Or were they all too busy gasping at Lady Primrose's unnaturally green décolletage? You sigh, comforted by the knowledge that perfection is a moving target, and that, by Victorian standards, you are already leagues ahead just for surviving the evening without fainting in public. Your muscles twinge from hours spent upright in a corset, but now unbound and blissfully horizontal, you savour the luxury of deep breaths. Each inhale brings a trace of rosewater and starch, each exhale a gentle hope that tomorrow's routines will be easier, or at least less flammable. You make a sleepy mental note, air out the bodice, hide the arsenic wafers, and perhaps try that new cold cream that promises both radiance and a mild tingling sensation. You try not to think about what exactly is causing the tingling. Sleep creeps in, ushering you toward the world of dreams, a place where face powder never cakes, hairpins never jab, and complexions glow without consequence. You drift through surreal landscapes, grand ballrooms under shimmering candlelight, where everyone's skin is marble smooth and no one's teeth wobble at dessert. In one dream, you attend a secret society where the only membership requirement is the ability to pronounce sublimate of mercury without wincing. In another, you waltz through a garden where the flowers are all tinted with the palest arsenic green, their petals dusted with powder as soft as clouds. Sometimes, the dreams turn mischievous. You find yourself in a foot race with Lady Fenwick, both of you dodging falling bonnets and leaping over puddles of rouge. Or you're awarded the coveted title of Pallor of the Year, only to discover the prize is a lifetime supply of complexion wafers and a small haunted mirror. Through it all, a chorus of past beauties cheers you on, their faces serene and unsettlingly luminous. Just before dawn, your mind floats to that wishful refrain. Perhaps tomorrow, you'll forgo the more hazardous regimens. Maybe you'll let your skin breathe, drink nothing more alarming than tea, and embrace whatever colour your cheeks naturally decide to be. Then again, you remember, tomorrow is the Duchess's luncheon, and rumour has it her new face cream is positively electrifying. It would be rude not to at least try a dab. A bird sings outside, heralding another day of risk and routine, of careful choices and chemical surprises. You roll over, grateful for the few quiet hours when you can be beautiful without effort, competition, or the threat of spontaneous fainting. For now, your only job is to rest, and as sleep finally claims you, you smile, content to dream of tomorrow's complexion, and grateful that for tonight you are perfectly peacefully enough. In Victorian England, that's about as close to bliss as anyone gets. You admire your bedroom's elegant emerald green wallpaper, a fashionable choice for the discerning Victorian. Little do you know, those lush patterns are dyed with arsenic, slowly releasing toxic dust every time you fluff a pillow or open a window. Each breath is a game of, will I cough tonight, or just see more spots? In the soft morning light, your room glows a luxurious green, every swirl and floral motif promising refinement and prosperity. The walls are the envy of your friends, their own bedrooms faded shades of beige or brown, lacking the vibrant hue that marks your family as thoroughly modern and more than a little daring. Guests gasp in delight on entering, fanning themselves in awe and perhaps also to disperse the faint chemical haze. So continental, they exclaim, so Parisian. No one mentions that the family canary hasn't sung since the redecorating. You never questioned why the painter wore gloves, or why he refused to eat lunch in your room, or why the housemaid seems to get headaches whenever she dusts the wainscoting. The pamphlets at the chemist's shop assure you that the new wallpapers are perfectly safe, provided you don't lick the walls, and who would ever do such a thing? Still, you notice that your father's evening newspaper leaves a green smear on his hands, and your younger brother has developed a persistent cough. There are rumours, of course. The neighbour's little boy was always pale and tired until they switched to a plain blue stripe. The haberdasher's wife says her aunt was done in by the drawing room, and now only lives in rooms painted a safe, boring taupe. You brush off the stories as old wives' tales, even as you catch yourself dabbing at mysterious rashes that bloom on your arms like exotic flowers. Fluffing your pillow each night is an act of faith. The feather-stuffed sack gives a satisfying poof, and you breathe in a fine mist that dances in the slant of the candlelight, sparkling, pretty, and just the slightest bit suspicious. When you close the window to keep out the chill, the room grows stuffy, heavy with the ghostly perfume of green dye. The air tastes faintly sweet and bitter at the same time, a scent you've come to associate with luxury. Cleaning day is a festival of hazards. The housemaid beats the rugs, sending up clouds of greenish dust that catch in the sunlight like fairy powder. She coughs behind her hand but says nothing. After all, she's lucky to be working in such a fine house. You help shake out the curtains, and afterward your hands tingle and your eyes water for hours. It's just the dust, your mother assures you, but you notice that her gloves are never far from reach. At night, when you snuggle beneath your heavy covers, you watch the moonlight ripple across the walls. The patterns seem to move, or maybe you're just imagining it. Some nights, your dreams are filled with swirling green vines, and you wake with a sore throat and a new spot on your pillowcase. Was it always there, or did it appear overnight? You try not to think about it. The true beauty of Victorian wallpaper is how completely it transforms a space, and quietly, the people who live there. Your complexion grows paler, your headaches more frequent, your appetite a bit more fickle. But you wouldn't trade your lush emerald walls for all the plain plaster in England. After all, what's a little risk when the reward is being the talk of the town? You drift to sleep beneath your poisonous masterpiece, breathing deeply and dreaming in shades of green, grateful for another day survived in the most stylish death trap money can buy. In Victorian England, even your wallpaper has a plot twist. You hop into a crowded horse-drawn omnibus, your face carefully powdered and cheeks meticulously painted. Within minutes, coal smoke, manure, and a fellow passenger's mysterious floral scent begin a three-way assault on your lungs. By the time you reach your stop, your makeup has migrated, your corset is tighter, and you wonder if there's a safe way to look elegant while gasping for air. Public transport in Victorian England is less about moving swiftly and more about surviving a social and sensory gauntlet. The omnibus, a box on wheels generously described as public convenience, lurches forward with a bone-rattling jolt. You grip your reticule tightly and wedge yourself between a mustachioed businessman with a cough to rival a steam engine and a matron whose hat has aspirations of flight. Space is a concept, not a reality. Proximity is inescapable. Almost immediately you're hit with a bouquet of scents so complex you could bottle it and call it eau de urban despair. There's coal smoke streaming through open windows, promising to suffocate any hope of a fresh complexion. There's the earthy tang of manure, an omnipresent reminder that London runs on hay and horses, not engines and oil. And then there's perfume. Someone, somewhere, is wearing an entire bottle of Nightshade Embrace, its toxic floral notes weaving through the air and fighting valiantly against the stench of city life. You hold your breath, but only briefly, as your corset reminds you that deep inhalations are now considered a luxury. With every bump in the road, your carefully arranged hairdo wobbles dangerously. A stray coal cinder drifts in, settling on your cheek with a sizzle that could be mistaken for flirtation. You dab discreetly, hoping your arsenic-laced powder will serve as both shield and disinfectant. The heat inside the omnibus rises, turning your rouge into streaks and your foundation into abstract art. The mirror you packed for touch-ups is buried somewhere in your bag, now unreachable due to the avalanche of knees, elbows and parcels piled atop your lap. The conversation inside is as unpredictable as the journey. A pair of governesses whisper about their employers, a student reads a treatise on cholera and its discontents, and an elderly gentleman expounds on the perils of modern conveyance. Every word is punctuated by the shudder and clatter of the omnibus, every laugh accompanied by a fresh cloud of soot. You attempt to maintain your composure, sitting bolt upright despite the jostling, lest you slide into someone's lap or, worse, undo hours of posture training. At each stop, new passengers board, bringing fresh aromas and decreasing the air supply. Someone sneezes. You offer a sympathetic smile while subtly repositioning your handkerchief as an impromptu filter. When the omnibus finally halts at your destination, you emerge a changed person. Your shoes are scuffed, your gloves are stained, and your dress has acquired a vague greyish tinge. Your lungs ache, your skin prickles, and your spirits are in need of resuscitation. But you've made it, out the door, onto the pavement, and into the bracing, only slightly less toxic London air. You do a quick assessment. Face powder, streaked but salvageable. Lipstick, migrated but recoverable. Hat still attached. You smooth your skirts, lift your chin, and stride off, trying to look as if you always intended your look to be avant-garde and windswept. Public transport in Victorian England is a test of endurance, style, and upper body strength. It's an obstacle course for the senses, a masterclass in damage control, and a daily reminder that sometimes the greatest beauty secret is simply surviving the journey without collapsing, or at least doing so with dignity. In this city, if you can keep your hat on and your fainting spells to a minimum, you're already ahead of the crowd. You spot your neighbour, Mrs. Carson, returning from the beauty apothecary with a suspiciously glowing complexion and the latest imported face cream. Suddenly your own routine feels hopelessly outdated. The arms race for beauty is on. More powder, more poison, and a dash of jealousy as you both try to outpale each other in broad daylight. The Carsons live just across the street, in a home nearly as grand as your own, though Mrs. Carson insists her marble steps are a trifle wider. But it isn't the architecture that keeps you up at night. It's the relentless, silent rivalry playing out in real time from parlour window to parlour window. Your morning begins with reconnaissance. You peer through the lace curtains, tea in hand, searching for signs of Mrs. Carson's latest aesthetic escalation. Today it's her complexion, a soft, otherworldly pallor with an undertone that glows suspiciously under the overcast sky. She catches your gaze, offers a demure wave, and disappears inside. You're left contemplating your own reflection, suddenly dissatisfied with the mere 6 layers of arsenic powder you manage before breakfast. The rest of the day becomes a covert operation. You send your maid to the chemist's shop on an unrelated errand, but remind her, pointedly, to inquire after any new products promising instant radiance or, ideally, a side effect of gentle numbness. She returns with 3 dubious samples. 1, a cream-boasting Parisian snow effect, achieve the glow of winter illness. Another, a powder labelled simply unnatural white. And for good measure, a vial of Venetian veil elixir, which, according to the tiny print, is not recommended for extended use or proximity to open flame. By afternoon your vanity is a war zone of tiny jars and pots, brushes and puffs. You experiment with combinations, dabbing, blending, and hoping for that elusive just unearthed look. Each new product tingles, stings, or leaves a suspicious residue. The mirror is unforgiving, but you persist. There's a garden stroll planned for later, and you refuse to be outshone, even if it means a little tingling or the risk of spontaneous rash. As the hour approaches, you assemble your arsenal. Gloves to conceal chemical burns, a wide-brimmed bonnet to shade any accidental yellowing, and a bottle of violet-scented cologne to mask the undertones of ammonia and defeat. You step out just as Mrs. Carson emerges from her front door, resplendent in her own armour of arsenic white and a faintly radioactive glow. You meet halfway between houses, exchanging pleasantries laced with the sharp edge of competition. "How are you, dear?" "You look radiant," she says, eyes narrowed ever so slightly. You return the compliment, fighting the urge to scratch at a developing itch near your left temple. The conversation is light. Weather. The latest scandal at Lady Appleton's ball, the tragic shortage of belladonna drops. But beneath the surface, each of you is scanning, searching for any advantage, any slip in the mask. Back home, you compare notes with your sister. "Did you see the shine on her cheekbones? I suspect she's trying the new illumination serum. Should we?" She nods gravely, and soon you're both applying another layer, the quest for supremacy eclipsing all thoughts of self-preservation. The day ends with both of you behind your curtains, side-eyeing each other across the street as the last rays of daylight glint off your arsenic-dusted foreheads. It's not just about beauty, it's about victory, status, and the unspoken understanding that to lose the arms race is to fade into the background, as forgettable as a modest blush at a funeral. Tomorrow will bring new products, new risks, and new strategies. But tonight, you sleep smug, knowing you met the challenge and survived. Glowing, pale, and, for now, just a shade more luminous than Mrs. Carson. In Victorian England, neighbours may come and go, but a good beauty rivalry is forever. Your hair is thinning, whether from the daily application of harsh dyes or the last batch of questionable curling tongs. The solution? A new wig, preferably made from the finest imported human hair. It looks fabulous until you discover it's infested with Victorian head lice. You scratch discreetly, hoping nobody notices the parade of insects fleeing your fringe. Victorian hair care is an exercise in creative problem-solving and social survival. If your natural locks have succumbed to a potent cocktail of ammonia rinses, animal fats, and experimental pomades, you're not alone. The beauty manuals insist that daily brushing, 100 strokes, minimum, is the secret to lustrous hair, but forget to mention that lustrous may quickly give way to absent. Luckily, the wig makers of London are up to the challenge. Their shops are stuffed with every manner of hairpiece, towering buns for evening, demure ringlets for day, and elaborate waterfall chignons that threaten low-flying birds. The finest wigs are constructed from real human hair, imported from the most fashionable heads in France, Germany, or, if you're particularly discerning, from the untouched countryside where country girls allegedly live innocent, tangle-free lives. No one dwells too long on the origin of the hair, better not to ask. The process of acquiring a new wig is a ritual. You step into the shop, surrendering your hat and dignity, and are invited to browse. The wigmaster, a man with suspiciously glossy curls, insists on a perfect match, pulling swatches from secret drawers and holding them to your scalp. After much consultation and the quiet exchange of shillings, you walk out with a box containing your new crowning glory, a masterpiece of style, shine, and potential parasites. The honeymoon period lasts until the itching begins. At first, it's just a tickle, a faint suggestion that something is not quite right. You dismiss it, blaming nerves, laundry soap, or the weather. But as the days pass, the sensation intensifies. You catch yourself scratching idly at the nape of your neck during tea, at the base of your ear while listening to a poem, and most mortifyingly, mid-curtsy at the Duchess's soirée. It's only when you retire to your bedroom and dare to investigate that the truth becomes clear. A quick lift of your new fringe reveals the bustling metropolis of head lice that now calls your scalp home. There are entire families moving in, generations thriving, all beneath the surface of your most expensive purchase. The horror is immediate, but discretion is key. Nothing ruins a reputation faster than being the unwitting host of a public infestation. Your options are limited. There are treatments, of course, vinegar rinses, tar soaps, and the mysterious Turkish powder recommended in the society columns, but none are guaranteed to work, and all threaten to send what remains of your own hair running for cover. You can only hope that regular brushing, strategic scratching, and a brave face will see you through the social season. Meanwhile, the wig becomes a new sort of companion, a secret you share only with your brush and your increasingly suspicious maid. You develop new skills, the artful adjustment, the discreet tug, the careful deployment of hat pins. In public, you are a vision of Victorian glamour. In private, you are a one-woman battle against the inexorable march of nature. But even as you wage war on your unwelcome guests, you can't help but laugh, quietly, lest you dislodge the cavalry. For in the grand theatre of Victorian beauty, a little scalp itch is a small price to pay for a perfectly coiffed illusion. Tomorrow, you might dare a different hairpiece, or, in a fit of rebellion, show your natural scalp and risk starting a new trend. The bold and the bald. After all, in this era, beauty is fleeting, but style, however itchy, endures. Late at night, you pen a letter to your best friend, detailing the week's cosmetic adventures, new lip stains that taste of bitter almonds, hair pomade that's also great for polishing boots, and the existential dread that comes with each new spot or blemish. As you seal the envelope, you wonder, will your struggles be remembered as fashionable bravery, or just a cautionary tale for the next generation? The candle gutters as you sit hunched over your writing desk, the soft rustle of nightgown sleeves and the faint crackle of the fireplace your only companions. On the blotter, smudges of powder and rouge mingle with ink blots, evidence of both literary effort and today's failed attempt at achieving a natural flush by gently stimulating the cheeks with Spanish fly. The results, you note, were neither natural nor pleasant. Your pen flies across the page. Dearest Beatrice, you begin, I fear I have risked life and limb in pursuit of a jawline worthy of sculpture. The new Sublime Shadow contouring powder promises miracles, but I suspect it's mostly chalk and wishful thinking. It clings to the creases and refuses to budge, much like the matron at last week's card party. You recount the saga of the almond-tasting lip stain, noting its peculiar aftertaste, sweet at first, then oddly medicinal, and finally leaving your tongue tingling for hours. You wonder aloud whether this is a symptom of fashionable sophistication or an early warning from your liver. Either way, your lips have never looked so vivid or felt so numb. Next, you describe your encounter with the double-duty hair pomade, sold as both a styling aid and a fine boot polish. The advertisement promised shine and resilience, and while your curls are certainly glossy, so are your slippers, the doorknob, and regrettably, the family dog. There is no end to innovation, you sigh, nor to the unexpected places one's head might leave an impression. You do not shy from discussing the emotional toll. Every blemish is a crisis, each freckle a minor tragedy. The powders promise to erase history, but I fear they are only writing new chapters, on my pillowcase, my gloves, and, once, rather spectacularly, on the shoulder of a dance partner. He was gracious, if a little pale by the end of the evening. You pause to sip cold tea, composing yourself for the grand finale. Dearest, you confess, sometimes I wonder if future generations will read our letters and marvel at our devotion. Will they praise our courage, dabbing arsenic on our cheeks, anointing our lashes with belladonna, or fainting gracefully in the face of industrial-strength soap? Or will they shudder, tut, and lock up their daughters' vanities for good? As the hour grows late, your thoughts turn philosophical. Is beauty truly pain? Or are we simply engaged in an elaborate dare with no winner in sight? Are we bold, or are we bored? Either way, I remain determined to outshine Mrs. Carson, survive the next dinner party, and keep at least half my eyebrows by Christmas. You fold the letter, sprinkle it with a pinch of face powder, for authenticity, and seal it with a kiss that leaves a faintly alarming stain on the paper. You wonder if Beatrice will be able to read it without gloves, or if she'll keep it as a relic, a reminder that Victorian beauty is less about perfection and more about perseverance. Sliding the letter into its envelope, you settle into bed with a smile, warmed by the knowledge that, whatever tomorrow brings, at least you'll have someone to laugh about it with. Because in the end, beauty fades, fashions change, and even the boldest cosmetic adventure becomes a story to share. And that, perhaps, is the real secret. In the grand history of suffering for style, laughter is the most enduring mark of all. And so, as the candlelight flickers low and the last traces of arsenic powder settle gently on your pillow, we leave behind the gilded, gaslit world of Victorian beauty, a world where every attempt to look radiant came with a side order of existential dread and a very real risk of spontaneous organ failure. Tonight you survived a gauntlet of poisonous creams, suffocating corsets, toxic wallpapers, and enough questionable cosmetics to keep several apothecaries in business and at least one undertaker busy for life, all in pursuit of the perfect complexion, the brightest eyes, and the tiniest waist, a daily routine that could end with either a compliment or a diagnosis. You tried not to faint at dinner, not to catch fire at the opera, and not to cough up a lung while flirting in the fog. That's dedication. Or possibly just what passed for self-care before the invention of sunscreen and a half-decent face wash. It's easy to laugh now, snuggled up in your safe arsenic-free bed, with central heating and a complete absence of mercury in your hair gel. But maybe, just maybe, spare a moment of gratitude for those long-ago beauty pioneers. For every face lost to a dodgy blush, for every eyebrow pencil that doubled as a slow-acting poison, for every brave soul who died trying to look just a little bit better on the world's weirdest catwalk. Because history isn't just grim and terrifying, it's also a testament to how far we'll go for a compliment and how resilient, hopeful and, let's be honest, deeply ridiculous people have always been. If you made it through the Victorian era with all your teeth and at least some of your original hair, congratulations. If not, well, you probably died fashionably and that's got to count for something. So tonight, as you settle in and drift off, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to the modern world, your ancestors, and the safety instructions on your moisturizer. Rest easy knowing that, at least for now, the price of being pretty is mostly just embarrassment at your high school yearbook photos and not, say, accidental death by eyelash glue. Sleep well, dream absurdly, and I'll see you in the next chapter of history's strangest bedtime stories. Good night.